welcome to another episode on the Darby Racing podcast. Quite a serious topic today, and I will put out a warning straight up that some of the content might be a little bit confronting or disturbing some people. We're going to be talking about mental health, and in particular, my best mate and longtime colleague Mark Holland went through some very dark days with depression. So this is a mental health podcast. You might be asking, why are we doing a podcast on mental health? Well, it all connects in with the Darby Racing landscape, the history of how Mark came to be working with Darby Racing. It follows on from band days that we talked about. But look, it is going to be a little bit confronting. I'm not exactly sure some of the content Mark's going to be talking to, but this is to help people. Mark was very adamant. I asked him on a number of occasions, is he comfortable talking about his past? He went through probably, a 10-year period. There were quite dark days for Mark. We're talking moments of thoughts of suicide and different things like that. So if this is confronting for you, we're going to get Dave from Stridle to put up some websites that you can visit if you need help in this area. It's certainly a big topic in the racing industry, and it's good to have Mark here once again. Mark, I'm going to get straight into it because it is quite a heavy topic, and we're going to get straight to, obviously you'll oscillate between the years. We're talking about probably, we'll start when in your sort of mid to late 20s, and you're 56 at the moment. Yeah. So it's some time ago, but we'll start there because that's when you first noticed you had a problem.
Yeah, it was probably late 90s. I would have been sort of in my sort of 20s. I was working for B&D Doors at the time. I was a supervisor there, so I had a pretty big role. And how it started for me was I noticed I started getting very tired a lot. I started getting really tired and couldn't understand what was going on. Did the normal things of going to see a doctor and that sort of thing, and he'd have blood tests and no, you're healthy, you're fine, you're young, you're fit, you're healthy, everything's great. So you kind of just went with it. But I do remember now, obviously going back, everything just started to close in around me. I noticed that I stopped answering calls from people, and you feel like everything's starting to close in around you. People would ring you, whether it was the office or anybody, and you just look at the phone and put it down. And you just didn't want to deal with it. And you were thinking, something's not right. Something is not right. And I guess it's hard to understand in this day and age when mental health is so prevalent and so everyone's heightened to it now. Probably gone the other way where it's over-heightened now with anxiety and depression, but back then in the 90s it wasn't really as prevalent. So when I went to the doctor again, I just kept going to him, and I remember at one point I was in the doctor's office, and what he would do because he was so busy, he had 2 surgeries going, they would put you in a surgery waiting for him so you knew you were the next in line. So I'm sitting in his surgery and I've fallen asleep in the surgery, and he came in, and I knew him well, and I said, "Mark, there's something wrong with me." And he's like, "Well, we've done the bloods, we've done everything." Anyway, he did bloods again. He said, "I think maybe you've got chronic fatigue syndrome." I said, "I don't know." Anyway, kind of fast forward from there, B&D got to be a bit of towards the end, it was a joke. Like, I was in charge of 30 to 40 fitters. I would take all their work in the mornings. I was responsible for all that, had a fair bit on my plate. And I would take in all their work, and this would be 6 o'clock I'd start. You'd take in their work, take a few hours, take their work in. I would walk out of that office, round the corner into the toilet and go to sleep. And I'd fall asleep in the toilets at B&D. And I'd snuggle up in the toilet because all I wanted to do was sleep. So I'd fall asleep, and you'd wake up and you'd look at your watch, or you go, I've been asleep for 2 hours in the toilet. And you'd come out and you'd sneak out and think, someone must notice. Anyway, they never did. Anyway. So in the meantime, I'm in the band, right?
So just to give people a little bit of continuity, we talked about the band days when I was a teenager, you were early 20s. This is after our band stage.
This is in Anthem.
Yeah. So this is before you got back into horses, obviously.
Yep.
And it was definitely well before Darby racing.
Yep.
Now, drugs come into it, which
Yep.
we'll talk about later.
Yep.
At this point when you're noticing something's wrong, are you drinking or taking drugs at this stage?
No. I was clean at that point, working, but I just knew something wasn't right. Doctors couldn't help me. No one could help me. Anyway, then it got to the point with the band. So what did the band? Anthem finished in 2001, 98, 99, 2000, about 2001, I think Anthem finished. And I knew by the end of Anthem, we at that point had residency at Star City. If you remember, we used to have to go in there every Friday. We were booked, we were residents, and it started to annoy me. It started to go, whereas I used to live for it.
Yeah.
I lived for it. And I started to go off the band. I was off the music. I'm starting to go, what is going on? And I'm telling Amanda, my wife, and you like I say, no one could recognise it. Anyway, I remember that I was losing interest in the band and the music, and it was like, well, I remember the very last week gig we did, if you remember, out at Molly Maguire's out at Camden. We'd finally got back in there because we got banned from there because of me, because I was going too hard and stirring the crowd up. Anyway, they said, we'll give him one more chance, but if that singer doesn't pull the line, you're gone again. Anyway, so I remember, I don't know if you remember, I was in bed. I remember Dave, our guitarist, ringing me saying, where are you? And I'm going, I can't do it, man. I can't do it. I can't get out of bed. He's going, man, we're all here. We've got to go on shortly. I'm going, I can't do it. He goes, have you tried any gear, speed? We're talking speed. I said, I've done it, man. I cannot get out of bed. Anyway, he finally talked me around, and I remember thinking, I'm going to go out there and I'm basically going to crucify everything. I'm going to go out there and and if you remember that gig, I went ballistic. That's when I got the crowd jumping. Milty was there on the floor. He said, man, that dance floor was buckling when you were yelling at the crowd and getting... And I remember getting towards the last songs, the bouncers were starting to head towards me, and they're looking, going like that, and I couldn't care. I did not care. The care factor was zero. I didn't care about the band anymore. I didn't care about music. I didn't care. And it wasn't making sense. It was not making sense. Anyway, we got fired after that. If you remember, we got dropped. And I didn't care. The care factor was zero. The other thing that came out was Kiss, obviously massive. Kiss were just a massive influence in my life. And at that point, that was sort of late 90s, again, 2000-ish, whenever it was, when they got back together and were coming back to Australia. And I didn't care. And even Amanda said to me, what's going on? I said, I don't know. Anyway,
Well, I think too, I'm still in your life at that point.
You were. Yeah,
because I'm the bass player.
You were the bass player in Anthem.
I wasn't really interested. I wasn't the guitarist. I was bass player. You were heading one way.
Yep.
And I was heading another. And no one said anything.
No.
We didn't really know. I was heading back to my roots where I was brought up in the church. And you were heading down the drug scene and still going out.
Yep.
And none of us really sort of talked about it. It just sort of went that way.
Yep.
And that was the last gig. And I probably do remember vaguely, you're all going through your own thing. You're late 20s, I'm mid-20s.
Yeah.
Struggling with life, what I'm going to do, and working in the family business. I'm in horse racing, but not Darby racing.
No.
And I think I sensed the problem, but I didn't know the extent.
Yeah.
None of us knew about depression, anxiety, none of that.
No.
I just thought you were still not over the scene, and you'd headed down into the party scene, and you'd become difficult to get a hold of, and I had my own issues of just growing up and headed my way. So we kind of started to really part ways at that point. Now, just to put in context too, we are talking depression here that you're about to talk, how it got diagnosed and the rest. One of the things you said is, about the walls closing in and not answering phones. And I'm sure we've all gone through that because all of us have some level of anxiety or depression. And it was later when you go down the diagnosis path. I mean, I still go through those issues when business gets too much and it's overwhelming. But there's a difference between a reaction, a depressive reaction, or a anxiety reaction to it becoming part of your life. And I suppose it's a good point to talk about how you got diagnosed and the process with that. And which might help someone out there of between a reactive, which is quite normal to react to bad news or be anxious about something. But when it takes hold of your life, there's certain things, the criteria they look at, which, talk us through how you got to that point of realising you had depression and what did you do about it?
Well, when I was going through therapy, they were saying to me exactly what you were saying. Everybody goes through bouts of depression. Everybody. Doesn't matter who you are, the highest of highs, the best, the biggest star in the world to the lowest. But they're kind of talking about, like you're saying, reactory depression. Something happens in your life and you get really down. You don't want to talk to anyone. You want to go. You got to process it. But when you don't have that underlying, you'll bounce back pretty quick. 24 hours, 48 hours. Yes, you get a funk. You have a funk for a day. You might lay in bed for a bit. You don't want to face anything, but you'll bounce back pretty quick.
Might even last a few days.
Absolutely.
A week even.
But how, which is this is really important, guys. How I got diagnosed with it was this man here. He'd actually had contact with anxiety with his own family. So what happened was when we started Rock Barton Road, Hollandale Lodge, we were going to go out and start the pre-training, and we set up the little property and we were going on that. And the whole time I'm doing it, I remember I'm in it because I was thinking, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm lost. I'm all I want to do is sleep again. I'm on the lounge sleeping. I'm
a bull at a gate.
You're a bull at a gate. You're 100 mile an hour, and I'm lost. I'm getting further and further into this hole.
So this property, we set up a little spelling farm. I'm still working at the family pizza shop.
I was working at Mark Connor's. The plan was leave B&D. Go into the racing game, get a few contacts, go that way, and we'll start up breaking and pre-training. So I was working at Mark Connor's. You were still at the pizza shop, but we leased this property. We're trying to set that up. We're getting all that all started. And I must admit, when that happened, it lifted me a bit.
Yeah, I remember
from
that.
where I was at B&D.
Because I talked you into going to Mark Connor's.
Yes.
And you seemed happy for a little bit?
I was. I remember when I resigned at B&D, it was the happiest I've been for a while because B&D, I'd been there for 7 years. I was over it. I didn't know what to do. And then you mentioned horses. We should get it. And I remember saying, there's no money in it, man. And you're like, no, we'll do our own business. Okay. And that lifted me. It was like, yeah, all right. Give you a bit of a goal. I was like, yeah, right. But it wasn't long because I've got this underlying thing that is growing inside me, this depression that is growing. I'm not addressing it. Mind you, when did we do that? That was sort of 2000-ish, 2001 maybe?
And you're always a very positive, get alongside person. We can do it. Because I had the drive and the passion. And you kind of would, whether it be guitar, in the band. And I started to notice, you're sleeping that, but you still don't, you're still unaware of the pressure. And I noticed we started clashing more. Yeah,
we did.
Because I'm bull at a gate and I'm trying to do things and I'm trying to make a go of it and you're not interested.
No.
To the point, it didn't take long, you actually snapped.
Yeah, I did.
And I said, I think you wanted to bash me.
Well, at one
and
point...
I said, I think it's time you left.
I remember saying to you, something's going on with me. I've got to leave. I don't want this to wreck our friendship. Because I don't know if you remember, that was one of the things as well, the triggers as well. So we'll get into it, but I was abused as a kid and never dealt with it. And what it would manifest is anger. When I was younger, when I was at school, even out of school, when I first went to the stables, when I'm still a teenager, the anger that was inside me and the aggression and the fights and it was all manifesting from this, that I hadn't dealt with this childhood. Anyway, those feelings disappeared for a long time, and I remember towards the end of the band, this same anger, and I'm in my late 20s, early 30s then, that same anger from when I was a teenager, when I was a kid, started welling again, and I'm wanting to fight everyone. I remember on the stage one time, I'm calling blokes up because I wanted to belt them. And even Dave's coming over going, the guitarist, he's going, what are you doing, man? I'm like, I'm going to kill this dude here. I wanted to fight Aaron's dad, Kieran. I'm firing up at him. It was, again, like you said, it's totally out of character for me. So the anger, and that built up again with us at Rock Barton, at Hollandale Lodge, this anger was building. And remember, I think that guy down the road, he brought the gun out, and I'm telling him to come up, bring your freaking gun up here. But the anger that was welling up.
I do have to put context in that story. It's a very heavy subject, but
yeah,
he's got a dog called Chief, and he's the best dog.
That's right.
He's a staffy, and this staffy's fearless and takes on everything. He took on cows, you name it. It's not funny, but it is funny.
Yeah.
Mark's having a terrible time, which we didn't know at the time.
No, we didn't.
Didn't know what was going on.
No.
And the place we're leasing, the family who lease it is next door.
Yeah.
So Chief decides he's going to go next door and kill his chickens.
Yeah.
And it's the biggest drama you've ever seen.
Yeah.
But instead of Mark going, oh man, I'm so
sorry.
He wants to shoot the dog. That's the bottom line.
That's right. He wanted to shoot Chief.
Which he probably was within his right.
Yeah.
But with where Mark was at,
yeah,
that was just
shoot
chaos.
me before you shoot my dog.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that.
I remember you going out on the front porch and screaming at him to bring your gun up here.
Yeah.
And I'll shove
that
it
was
up.
pretty much the end. You and Amanda moved out with this 2-bedroom.
So that's
place.
when we moved out. And it wasn't until a little bit later when you said to me, I think I know what's wrong with you. I'm like, what? You said, I think you've got depression. And I remember at the time, depression, as I say, it's not as prevalent as it is now. Like this is 23 years ago. Like I'm talking 2000, 2001-ish, 2002 maybe. So you're talking 20 years ago. It's a long time in social criterias. And I remember when you said that to me, I'm going, no, man, there's something wrong with me. I'm not mental. And you're like, no, I've seen Karen, your sister, and your family members, and there's tendencies that I'm seeing in you. I think you... Anyway, you said to me, I'll take you to the doctor. And we went to the doctor at Camden here. And I went there going, this is rubbish, but I
think we kind of drifted a bit after that.
We did.
I know it shook me because I didn't understand it.
No.
And I had my own growing up, trying to work out who I was.
Yeah.
So time had passed a little bit, but I know, stay in contact.
Yep.
And you're getting more reclusive.
Yep. I was getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah. You're piling on the weight.
I'd left Hollandale Lodge and didn't have a job.
No.
And I didn't care. Anyway, you took me to this doctor. And I remember at the time, they've actually still got them. There was a sheet that you filled out. And I'm going, give me this stupid sheet. Yeah, whatever. And it'll ask you a series of questions, In the last week, have you had these thoughts? In the last week, have you done this? In the last week. And bugger me, I'm terrible in all of them. So I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Go and see the doctor. They say, you're suffering depression. I'm like, right.
So we think we're having a breakthrough here.
Yeah, we think this is great.
This is only the beginning
only the
beginning of the down.
Yep. So it's like, okay, sweet. What do we do? And it's like, well, medications, anyway. So then starts the path of medications, counselling. So you think also that, okay, we've got to put the finger on it. It's depression. Okay, what do we do? How do we fix it? Well, it's not an easy fix. It ain't an easy fix.
That's where you went down the rabbit hole.
Yep. You're talking a guy that was in his early 30s that had been, obviously, I was abused as a kid, which is that's the crux of it.
But you didn't realise that as well?
No. Never.
The effect of that?
No, never realised it, never told anybody. Nobody knew about it. My mum didn't know about it. Nobody knew about it, what happened.
Broken marriage.
I had to stay with my dad and the stepmother. I had the typical sort of evil stepmother, abused, bashed, that sort of thing. Nothing sexual, purely physical, mental, beat downs. Basically, you're worthless, and you don't realise. I kind of thought, well, doesn't everyone
cop a beating
every now? Anyway, when you think you've got okay, sweet, okay, well, what do we go down the? So then, this is extremely important. Don't think you're just going to go to the first counsellor down the street and they're going to fix everything. Counselling is something that you have to do. Counselling and medication is a key. You cannot get out of mental health without counselling, proper counselling and proper medication. And to find the exact combination of the right drug for you and the right counsellor for you, mate, that is hard in itself. I was going to counsellors and starting to unload a lot of my baggage, and I remember some of them looking at me going, one lady actually said to me, "You're actually too messed up for me. Like, you're above my pay grade." And I remember leaving there, and I remember Amanda was wild. She's like, why would she even say that? And I got to the point where I was that sick of going to psychologists and explaining my story and them not being able to help me. It wasn't until I finally found a psychologist that was incredible. I was looking for someone that I could pour out how I'm feeling and she could give me the answer, and then you feel like that. Yes, I do.
But finding her, was that before you plummeted? Is it during the plummet? Because there's a period in this story where you are in all sorts.
Yep.
Suicidal.
Yep.
You're 130 kilos.
Yep.
You're taking drugs.
Yep.
To self-medicate yourself.
Yep.
You're not letting anyone in.
Yep.
And it's seriously out of control.
Yeah. No, this was. I didn't find her until I was well into that pit.
Right.
I was well into the pit. I got to the point where it ended up being diagnosed as severe depression, severe anxiety, and also agoraphobia. Agoraphobia is when, as you would remember, I used to just basically hide in the house. I would not answer the door. I won't answer phone calls. I was basically bedridden, and I was in that house, and the minute that door would knock, my heart would race, and I'd be sneaking to the window to see who it was, and I just would not answer that door, whether it was Mum, my brother Darren. The only person I let in was you, and the only other person I used to let in was Carcass, Mark Burke. The reason I let those two people in, Scott and Mark, they were non-judgmental. So this is extremely important, guys, for people that have got loved ones, you cannot judge them because no one knows what they're going through. I was in hell. I was in a black hole that I could not see a way out of. And my loved ones, like Mum, Darren, would come round, and their natural thing is to try and pull you out. Come on, you can't just sit here, man. You can't just sit here. You can't. What are you doing? You can't just. And that just pushes you further down the hole. That pushes you further down. Whereas you'd come over, and oddly, I wouldn't let them in because I didn't want to go through that. You would come over and just sit on the lounge and we'd chat.
Well, it's probably fortunate because I don't like to judge, one.
Yeah.
But two, my family's got a history of just anxiety.
Yeah.
My sister and my brother, particularly. I think my brother might have been going through it when you're going through it.
Yeah.
And you learnt just to sit with him, and there's nothing you can do.
No.
I learnt through him there is nothing you can do but be there.
No.
What do you need me to do?
Yeah.
Like telling someone, come on, you need to go for a walk. Come on.
Yeah.
You need to get on the gym. Come on.
Yeah.
If they're going to do it, they would have already done it.
Yeah.
It's just being there, giving them support.
Yeah.
Learning more about it.
Yeah.
But let's talk about how serious it got. Like some of the, you just talked about the psychologist that probably helped you start to go that way. But there's some pretty serious. I remember some stories myself. We're talking in the realm of obviously drug use.
Yeah.
Like you weren't a drug addict, but you were really using drugs.
Yeah.
Because like your doctor said, I remember at the time saying, well, I can see why you're taking speed. I think speed was
that was the one. Yeah.
Because you're trying to self-medicate yourself.
That's right.
It's like a Panadol. Like you're trying to fix. No one's fixing you.
Yeah.
It's not that you wanted to go and party anymore. That's finished.
No.
You just wanted to be normal.
Yeah.
So you've got a drug problem.
Yeah.
You're not working.
No.
You're not paying your bills.
No.
You've just about lost your house.
Yeah.
You talked about moments of killing yourself. Yeah. Which is quite obviously common with depression and things like that. The parts you can drive. But we even, I remember particularly the story that really sticks with me is the demonic side. Yeah. Which, obviously it's not for everybody, but, the spiritual realm. But from my church upbringing, angels and demons are quite prevalent. And you tell a story that it got that dark for you. And that's, in my background, that's where the demons love to attach themselves to, is something dark, and keep evil, bad. Yep. And you're obviously right in that place. And tell the story about when you're in that moment and that black mass is attacking you.
Well, that was after Jesse was born. Jesse was born in 2004. And I remember at this point I wasn't a Christian. I wasn't a Christian. I was just normal. I believed, but I wasn't.
But you hadn't given your life.
Nah, I wasn't sort of. So I can remember vividly. I'm laying in bed and I'm in the pit of hell, basically. Mentally, physically. Physically, with the medication, I've blown out to 130 kilos at my heaviest. I was massive. And I remember laying in bed and just feeling, I was on my back and I was dead asleep. And whether I thought I was dreaming or it started getting heavy on me. And I'm like, the hell is this? And you sort of, you're half asleep, half awake. And I woke up and I'm like, oh, shit. I feel like I'm just getting crushed. Yeah. And I wake up and all I can see is this black thing on top of me.
And like a black cloud, black mist.
Just dark.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and mine wasn't fear. Mine was aggression towards it. Get it. And then I remember at some point it come through me. The sound came through me, and the normal, what you see in the movies, it was like, and that actually scared me. But I still thought it and got up and jumped out of bed. And I remember Amanda jumped up and she's like, what's going on? And I'm like, I don't know, something just attacked me. And she's like, what? Anyway, it was here. I remember calling Dave and Janine. They were actually down That's my
Your sister
sister.
Janine, yeah.
My sister Janine. And at this time, Janine, my sister, and my mum are heavily into, like, they're Christians, like, and they were luckily down because they lived up Queensland way.
Didn't you ring your nan?
Ballina. I rang Auntie Leela.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I rang Auntie Leela. So I ring them and tell them what's going on, and they say, "Hang on a sec, we'll be over." And then I rang Auntie Leela, and I rang Auntie Leela because I was panicked, and I could see it. It was sitting in the kitchen, and I'm looking at it. It's sitting up in the corner of the kitchen, and I'm on the phone to Auntie Leela, and she's going, "Right, love, right."
She's a Christian.
She's a Christian, right, love. So you tell that thing to, and I'm like, she goes, "Is it there?" And I'm going, "Yeah, it's right here. I'm looking right at it."
And you're not under the influence of
No,
drugs?
no, I'm normal. I'm just normal.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at it. Anyway, in the meantime, waiting for, then Dave and Janine turned up.
Hang on, wasn't there a part where it tried to push you down in front of the kiss shrine? And Neil, you had a kiss where all your kiss memorability, and it attacked you and tried to push you down, like to kneel in front of it.
I don't remember that.
Yeah,
I don't remember
you
that.
telling me that.
Did I?
Bit. I'm like,
I don't remember that bit.
weird.
I remembered.
And attacking Amanda.
Yeah, then I remember Dave and Janine coming over. And they come flying in the door, and at this point, I'm in the lounge room. I think Amanda might have been as well, obviously trying to remember it. But they come over, and mind you, it's battle stations. I'm yelling and screaming, and at this point, they came straight in, and Dave saw it straight away. He saw it straight away. He said, "Yeah, I can see it. I can see it." And he starts praying and all the rest of it. And like, this is pretty heavy, guys, but this has happened. And mind you, I ain't a Christian at this point. This is what was happening. So Dave starts, Amanda loses it and runs into Jesse's room. Actually, maybe Jesse wasn't born. She ran into Jesse's room, which ended up being Jesse's room. Anyway, Dave and I are chasing it around the house because I've got courage. I'm not worried about it. I'm not scared of it. I'm thinking, screw you. Anyway, we chased it and we lost it. I don't know. Anyway, then Amanda starts screaming, "It's in here, it's in here." So this is my wife. It's in it. So she sees it. So then we race into Jesse's room, and again, we're doing all the rest of it, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, we finally get to the end of it, and Dave goes, "It's gone." And I'm like, "Has it?" And he goes, "It's gone." I said, "All right." So then they walked around the whole house and did the blessing and all the rest of it. And he said to me, "I don't know how far you want to go with all this." He said, "But I'm here to tell you there's doors open in this house for them to come in, apart from what you're going through." And that's when he mentioned the kiss thing and all the rest of it. Anyway, it was kind of like, yeah, right. So that was that. And in the meantime, probably before that happened, the first time I had thoughts of killing myself, I woke up in the middle of the night and just had this overwhelming feeling to end it. Just end it. This is ridiculous. No one can help me. The medications aren't working. The counselling's doing nothing. I'm in a dark hole. I cannot see a way out. I think I'm done. So I went out to the medicine cabinet, and I pulled all the medicine cabinet, and I'm trying to find what I could take just to overdose. Like I'm going through it, trying to look.
Awful.
What can I take? What can I take that's going to do the job? And obviously it's a blessing, there was nothing there. There was nothing there that I thought was going to just end me. So then I sort of panicked a bit because I still had these, and I rang Dave. I remember it was in the middle of the night, and I rang him. And he's like, what's going on, mate? And I'm like, man, I started crying, and he's like, "What's wrong?" And I'm thinking about killing myself. oh man, don't do that. Don't do. Anyway, he talked me around and we started to.
Did the ambulance come?
No, that was another time. So that is something as well to be mindful of. I'm only talking personal experience. I seriously thought about suicide a couple of times, and I never told anybody. My Amanda was at one point. The first time, Amanda was laying in bed next to me. I didn't say anything to her. I just wanted to end it. And the second time, she was driving a car and she had no idea that I wanted to do it. So...
And this is all because you thought no one could help you.
No one can help me.
There's no way out.
No.
The thoughts are that dark.
Yep. There is zero light.
And you're talking about a bloke when I first met, when I was 19... was the most encouraging, uplifting, fun, positive. So in the space of 8 years, 10 years,
I turned into that.
That's what you went through.
And the night of the ambulance was when I had it turned out irritable bowel.
Right. And you panicked.
And I was in pain. I was in bad pain.
Right.
And they called the ambulance around, and I'm in the middle of depression too. Like, it's a heavy depression. And then they came round and they thought, because they couldn't wake me up, and they thought I was on drugs. So they're doing on the chest, Mark, and they're into me. And they treated me like shit, to be honest with you. They treated me like shit. And they ended up saying, do you want to come? And I didn't want to go anyway. Ended up going. Amanda was upset with it anyway. I went out to the ambulance, and this particular male ambulance driver was a dick. He was a real dick. And I was putting up with it for a bit because I thought, I better go, something's not right. Anyway, we finally got into the back of the ambulance, and he kept pushing my buttons, and I lost it. I did grab him and shove him to the back of the ambulance, and I'm throwing things, and they'd shut the door, and I'm kicking the door, trying to let me out. Anyway, they let me out. I went inside, and next thing you know, that's when about 6 cop cars turned up, and the cops all come in, and they were trying to wake me up. And Amanda's explaining to him he is in severe depression, and I'll be honest with you, those ambulance drivers treated him like shit. No wonder he fought, because they'll come to take me away. Anyway, luckily, the policeman that came, he identified straight away that this he's not right. Like, he's got mental issues. And they woke me up and had a little chat, and they said, you're all right, mate, go back to sleep. And they just left me. But that was another case of that anger and rage was still there. And it wasn't until, like I said, I met this, I know I'm bouncing around a bit with dates and years, but it's all sort of as it comes to you.
Well, we're going to get to the good news now, because I'm feeling pretty heavy right now, and I'm thinking anyone watching this, listening to this must be that know you or don't know you. It's pretty heavy, like it's severely heavy. So there is good news coming. Yeah.
Well, the other thing, I went to the psychologist, who was brilliant, and she really helped me out of a pit that I was in. She was so good, very intelligent, just knew how to help, and really did help me a long way. And she said, it's your childhood. And I'm like, no. She goes, I'm telling you, it's your childhood, and you haven't dealt with it. Dealing with it as in coming to peace with it, letting it go, addressing it. I didn't address it. I just let it go because I thought I was fine. As you said, when you met me, I'm this happy-go-lucky, everything's great, the world's incredible. I never told. The only person I told was Jane, my first wife. She was the only person I told. And when I told her, she started crying. I'm like, what's wrong? She's like, no one deserves to be treated like that. And I'm like, anyway, how the psychologist got me to resonate with me. She said, the problem with all you abuse victims, if you have not dealt with it by the time you're 30, it will come back and bite you like it did to me. So if anyone out there has been abused as a kid, you need to address it. You need to recognize it and address it, because it will come back at you. You have to come to terms with it. And she said to me, the problem with you 30-year-olds that have been abused as a kid is you think yourself, this big tough bloke. Nah, she said, you need to go out there now and have a look at the 6, 7, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, and imagine what happened to you at that age. And it resonated with me. I'm straight away going, you're right. I'm thinking about how I am now. And so that was a penny to drop, and was like, wow, yep.
I remember when you shared that with me, and it hit me like a ton of bricks.
Did it? Yep.
Not because I was abused,
Yep.
but just the message of a young kid,
Yep.
and how much words
Absolutely.
or actions impact.
Yep.
And I'm just reminded, very quickly, my son Tristan's 9 years old, very impressionable, reminds me a lot of me, meek, mild.
Yep.
And had an incident on the weekend where an adult sort of talked down him really harshly, and he squeezed my hand tight, and I'm thinking, it reminded me exactly what you're saying. You got no idea the effect it can have on a young person.
Absolutely.
When you get older, you can handle things better, and it's still hard. But as a young kid, particularly some types of kids, and if it's not dealt with, they're going to deal with it some way. With me, that I went through, I ended up rebelling at the age of 16. I was the quietest kid, but I had been, didn't deal with things, so I remember when you told me that story, I'm like, that makes sense. That gives me light on paths I went on because I couldn't, and I think as a child, like my dad was a standover. Big,
he was. Big, loud,
school principal, and I would just
crumble,
wilt.
Yep. And that's probably another key thing for all of us with our kids, is you have to be very careful what you say to them, because it does sit with them. It really does. I've always tried to be very mindful of what you say to your kid, and because I know what it's like. Like, I was worthless for years, locked in a room and stay in your bedroom. That's your life. Stay in the bedroom, get home from school, in the bedroom.
And sometimes you generally, without getting into much of psychology and family history, but you kind of follow your parents.
Absolutely.
And I remember I had to make a clear choice.
I remember you were very paranoid about it.
Following my dad, who was just, he never abused us, but he was heavy. Like, because his dad was heavy.
Yep.
And just, I started that way with my kids, and then I went, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
And I completely turned it around.
Yep.
But anyway, keep going, because the news gets better.
Yeah, so ultimately, guys, this story is a story of redemption and a phoenix rising. So hang in there. I want to tell this story and tell the meat and because it could help someone. It could help you. It could help if you're listening to this or watching this and you're going through it, or if you've got early symptoms of it, or you know someone. Hopefully, this can help you. So this lady that helped me, she really did help me a lot. But it got to a point where even she said, I've taken you as far as I can take you. Like, she sort of put the hand in and reached, and then she kind of said, you've gone as far as you can go with me. You need to now. And I'm like, well, can you recommend anyone? She's like, I can't really. And it's like...
Is she putting you on medication as well?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, she had me on medication. So I can't 100% remember how I got to a psychiatrist, but a lot of it because trying to sort of get out of depression, it's like this.
Well, don't they say that as long as it takes you to come into depression, so it took you 3 years to fully get to there, it'll take you 3 years to come out. And I think you said that once.
And so I finally got to a psychiatrist, this guy at Campbelltown, who I don't even remember his name, but he was no good at all. and he started putting me on heavy medication. And naturally, after I left her, I started to drop again because I wasn't getting.
I remember that.
I wasn't getting the right help. Anyway, I started going backwards. And this guy put me on a drug. I remember it was called Effexa. And he started me on a low dose. And the other problem with depression is you got to be patient, which I'm not. I've got a form of ADHD as well. So I'm not a very good patient person. So you have to be patient and let the medication work. So that wasn't happening. Anyway, I'd keep going back to him and going, no, I'm no better. So he'd up the dose. Same again, up the dose, up the dose, up the dose. I don't even remember what I was on. I was on a ridiculous amount of drugs. It was coming out of my pores. It was leaking out of my bottom. The bed stunk. We used to have to change. We went through mattress after mattress because it was just seeping out of my pores. It was Mum that said to me, I've spoken to a paramedic and they said, you need to get off that medication ASAP because that dosage of medication is going to kill you. And I remember going back to him and telling him that, and anyway, my anger spiked again and I leapt across the desk at him and was going to kill him. And a man had grabbed me and all the rest. Anyway, then he put me on antipsychotic medication and that leveled me as well. So then I sort of lost that, and then I was, again, the big light moment was I went to a doctor who was a very good doctor. I just started to see him, and he said to me, I'm not going to muck around anymore with the people that you're seeing. I'm going to send you to, I can't remember his name now, he was at Penrith, and he was a professor of psychiatry. So this guy was the bomb of the bomb, can help everybody. And it's like, this is outstanding. All right, okay. So we hike over to Penrith and we go in and see him and you tell him your story yet again. Yep, what dosage you're on? Yep, no, not a problem. I can definitely fix you. I can fix you. And you're like, really? Oh, wow, this is so good.
It's a good one, a doctor says.
Oh, yeah, this is so
Not
good.
many can.
And he's an old dude, very knowledgeable, plaques all over the wall. They'd done stories on A Current Affair, this guy. This guy was a legend in psychiatry. So you're like, wow. Anyway, he didn't help. So I'm going over and seeing him, and we're changing medications, and we're upping dose, and we're dropping dose, we're doing this, we're doing that. And I'm starting to lose it again. I'm starting to go, mind you, this guy was off for the fairies, as in you'd go into his waiting room and you're full of a waiting room of depressed people, anxiety people, everyone's sitting there doing this, tapping legs, and I used to sit there and I'd say to him, man, I can't do this. So I would go and sleep in the car, and Amanda, poor Amanda, she's been to hell and back with me. God love her. God love her. She used to sit in the waiting room and wait, and then when they call my name, she'd come out and wake me up. Bubby, he's ready for you. And I'd sort of stumble in. There you go. How are you feeling? No good. Right. So then he got to the point where he said, I can't help you. I've tried everything. I'm really sorry, but I can't help you. So that was the day that I thought, that's it. We're driving back on the Northern Road and I'm asleep and I'm thinking, that's it, I'm done. So then I thought, I'm just going to open this door and jump out. So I had my hand on the handle, and like the Northern Road, you're doing 100 Ks. So I'm thinking, yeah, this should kill me. Then I started to go, oh shit, maybe it won't. So I'm thinking, hang on a sec, maybe if I jump and hang on to the seatbelt, it'll drag me under the car and that'll kill me, surely. So I got the hand on the door handle to open it, And for whatever reason, I didn't do it. But she was oblivious. She's driving, just probably got the hand on me saying, it's all right, darling,
I thought you said the good news was coming.
It's coming. So, ultimately,
How many years in are we at this point?
Oh, geez. Well,
it was a 10-year period, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was from sort of late 90s to, sort of mid 2000, 2006, 2007, roughly. So, the thing I know what saved me was Jesse.
Your son, your first born.
So my son's born. It was actually, he's actually a blessing and a miracle. Again, I'm still not a Christian at this point, but he was a miracle because my wife was on the strong Depo-Provera that they put under your skin, and you can't get pregnant. Well, she comes out and she's crying. She comes out and she's crying. I'm like, oh, what's wrong? I'm pregnant. I'm like, I was actually excited. You what? I'm pregnant. That's awesome. How are you? And she starts going, why are you happy? And I'm like, how? Anyway, she's done the test and she's pregnant. And it's like, but how? Because you've got she goes, I don't know. It shouldn't be happening. Like, anyway, she's pregnant. So I think what happened at that time was the focus went off me and went on to him.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, I think there was that thing that came in that it changed that mindset. I've got a son.
But it wouldn't have been just that. It would be all what you've learnt through the
Absolutely.
That
That
might have been the catalyst.
Yep. Because by then I'd got onto another good psychologist that was at Parramatta. AMP, luckily, I don't know how, because if it wasn't for Mum and Amanda, I would have lost everything because I did not care. I did not care. Actually, I found this note. This will sum up where I was at, because one of the psychologists said to me, I want you to write down what you're feeling. And I found this in the shed about 12 months ago, and I was shocked. I was like, wow, what is this? Anyway, this says, I know that I am still alive somewhere inside this mess. It's just so dark in here. I now know that I am totally alone. I have realised that. So I'm writing that I'm totally alone, even though I've got the support of you and Amanda and loved ones. So that's the mindset of where the depressed person is. Like, you're in a battle and you are on your own.
I think make it very clear too, this is a severely depressed person.
Well, I was rated off the chart depressed, severely depressed, as high as you could get. So I did not care. I would have lost the house. I would have lost everything. I wasn't paying bills. I didn't care. They ended up having to access my super. That was one of how we sort of got out of it, was they accessed super through, can't remember what it's called, but it's through situations like that you can access your super. So I did that, and that sort of saved it.
So coming out of it, it was obviously a bit by bit process.
Yep.
Your son's born.
Yep. Jesse was the big one. Jesse being born was big. He was born in 2004, and he was huge. But then what happened was, and I mean, he was such a good baby. He was such a good kid. Like, he hardly cried. He was such a good kid. But then what was happening was, it was probably similar to when I left B&D and went to Hollander, You get that little spike, and you drop again. So he was born, and it was like, and then I started to drop again, and I'd have those thoughts again of like, I'm like, what sort of father am I going to be to this kid? Anyway, it was you again that stepped in and kind of said, have you ever thought about... So obviously I was in a mindset to be accepting what you were saying to me, and you were like, have you ever thought about getting into horses again? And it was kind of like, for some reason, it was an absolute trigger. It was an absolute trigger. It just resonated with me. Yeah, horses.
I think one of the things I remember back
Horses.
about that and suggesting that was way I did know you weren't the most active person, and through that you were non-active whatsoever. But you're generally pretty quiet. You're not out and about. And I do remember from all that stuff, exercise is so important, and you know, animals can play a big part. So and I knew your talents with horses, breaking in back in your day. So it was more just a suggestion. You know? There's nothing more you can do than suggest. Yeah.
Well, I remember going down the animal path. Like, I had Chief and Xena. I had two staffies. Love my staffies. And like I said, I was bedridden for years and years. I was bedridden. And those two dogs sat on that bed with me 24/7 every day of the week. They just sat there and with me. That's why when those two passed away, even though I was out of depression at that time, especially Chief, the dagger through my heart when they passed away, because the comfort and that they gave me through that time. And then when you suggested horses again, I don't know why, because the last time we suggested horses, it turned to shit.
Yeah.
Like it was turned to crap. But when you suggested it again, I don't know why, but it kind of went. So I actually I put a little ad in the paper. I don't know if I told you that. I put a little ad in the paper of re-educating problem horses. Yeah, and I started going around people's and fixing their problem horses, and I actually loved it. Then I met Mick Sweeney. And
so this is before Scott Wade.
This is before Scott Wade. So then I met Mick Sweeney, how he came about was, I don't know if you remember K Ranch. No, Scenic Hills. Scenic Hills is a massive riding ranch here at Campbelltown area, massive. And the Sweeneys owned it. So Mick Sweeney, he was advertising. When you mentioned a horse, I thought, I might buy a horse. A pleasure horse to ride and to... It really resonated. So I went up. He was advertising a quarter horse. And I thought, right. Anyway, we went up and we went out for a ride around Scenic Hills. This horse was incredible. We went all over Scenic Hills, him and I. We're riding everywhere, insane trails. The last one we come down was a hill. It was like the freaking Man from Snowy River. It was like this. And we're galloping down this hill. And we got back and him and I just clicked. And he goes, you're a hell of a rider. What do you, and then I sort of went, I'm thinking about, and obviously don't tell anybody what you're going through, but I'm like, so anyway, through that, I didn't end up buying the horse, but him and I connected. And he goes, would you ever be interested in coming to do a bit of work with? And it was kind of like, yeah, all right. So then him and I hooked up and we started doing the same, re-educating horses and selling them and doing all the rest of it.
Could you feel yourself at that point starting to really come out?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was on the path out. I was feeling better, still not working, but doing this, and the horses were like therapy. They were like therapy. When I was with the horses again, it took me back to the childhood. I don't know. I really connected with the horse again. And
so would you say that's a pretty big part of anyone watching or listening that's
absolutely
going through?
I've got some...
Is it animals or passions? Or
It's passions. I've got a little checklist that I'll tell you at the end of what, and that's one of them. One of them is to if you're going through depression or you've got to try and reconnect with something that was a passion, something that give you the twinkle in the eye. I remember people used to talk to me about music or horses. They'd say, when you talk about them, you get a twinkle in your eye.
Mm.
And that's the thing I think will definitely, like, horses I just reconnected with them because horses don't judge you. They don't, you're just there with the animal. And it really connected. And Mick Sweeney, as far as I'm concerned, he was one of the best horsemen I'd ever come in contact with. He was a freak. So while he was telling me how good I am, I'm looking at him going, you're a freak. So I was just soaking up whatever he was. I was just going, yeah, right. He was great. And he helped me. He was great. He helped me. I didn't actually tell him about what I was going through until, timeline again, when I got put on that antipsychotic medication from that. I went to his place to do some work with the horses, and I barely made it in the car, and I just had a bit of a seizure in the car, and he came out and was like, holy shit, what is wrong? And I told him, we went inside, and I slept for about 6 or 7 hours. He come out and I explained it to him, and he said, man, my sister was on that. That is for psychotics. You are not psychotic. What? Then I told him the story, and he said, that's ridiculous. That is, anyway. So then at some point, I'm not sure, obviously you and I were starting to reconnect, and Scott Wade got brought up.
Yeah, well, Scott Wade was a good friend of
Yep.
mine at that point. He's a horse breaker. He's into the trots and race. Don't see him much anymore,
Yeah.
or at all. But spent time with him. Part of my passion into horses before Darby racing.
Yep.
And I suggested to you should come up, even if you volunteer, come
Yep.
and work with Scott, good bloke,
Yep.
local, get back into it.
Yep.
That's exactly what you did.
And that's
you
what-
really progressed
Yep.
time from there.
Yep. And that's what I did. When I went up to Scott's, it was initially as just volunteer, because I went up there and just thought, this is so good. I'm back with the horses. I'm doing what I love. And it resonated. It absolutely resonated. And Scott ended up saying to me, at some point he said to me, I can't have you doing this for nothing. You're too good at what you do. He said, I feel like I'm taking advantage of you. And I for a long time said, no, man, you're not. No, I appreciate what you're doing for me, because it was really it was helping me to no end to get back to horses, something that I know well, something that I love, and the horses can also give back to you. So when you're teaching them and encourage it, like, they can give back to you.
So those were the days, if you remember, of early Derby as well, towards the end of Scott Wade's.
That was when I went to Scott's. You were still with Storm.
Yeah, but in the early Derby days,
Yep.
you had our Joan of Arc was in that period, and the very early, and you progressed pretty quickly.
I
You
did.
outgrew
I did.
Razorback
Yep.
stud.
I did.
Um,
Within a couple of years, I'd bounced back so quick and so well. Through a course of, mind you, I'm still having therapy at this time. I'm still having therapy. And by then, I'd landed on Prozac. And for whatever reason, I know the Prozac's probably the most common name. For whatever reason, it was the one that resonated with me and helped. A lot of the others, I went through so many medications that had so many side effects with me and basically didn't work, or they worked to a point and then stopped. But the Prozac just hit me, and it was the one. So in combination, while I'm sort of working my way back through horses and reconnecting with life again, and I'm still in therapy. I was in therapy for years and taking medication the whole time. So the whole time I'm still doing it.
But you're on the way out of the pit.
On the way out.
Picking up quick. As I suspected, you're that good at horses. You outgrew Razorback stud because, look, it was more of a
Hobby.
business hobby.
Scott was more. It was more a hobby for
fireman,
Scott Wade. Yeah.
and you progressed to Heritage Farm,
Yep.
which was another local farm where
Yep.
Darby used to spell their horses.
Yep.
And you ended up being the manager there.
Yeah. Well, when I went to Heritage Park, I was obviously really sad to leave Scott Wade because he'd done so much for me. He was instrumental in helping me, nurturing. He knew what I was going through. I explained everything to him. So he, again, never pushed me. Whatever you want to do, if you want to go home, go home. If you don't want to come in, don't come in. So he was instrumental. It was very important to have someone like him to help you along the way. But I did come out of it reasonably quickly, really.
No, you did. You seemed like you were in it for a long time.
I was.
But once you made good steps, you went pretty quick and rose through the ranks.
I think I went to Heritage about 2008, I think, roughly. So I was trying to think the first ones
Darby was starting in 2007.
I think the first ones I broke in up there for you were like Champagne Dynamite.
Second season, yeah.
Second season. The first season was with Scott.
Yep.
So that'd be right. It'd be 2008, 2009. Yep. Yeah. So that again that's 4 or 5 years after Jesse was born.
Yep.
So you could see even when Jesse was born in 2004, that was a hit for me, but it still took a number of years to get back to that top. But by the time I'd finished with Scott, I was really back.
You were losing the weight.
I was losing weight. I was riding. I was braking. I was driving the truck down to Queen. Driving because Scotty Wade he only had a small team of horses, but it used to be great. You'd drive down to Canberra and Goulburn and get in the truck and drive down and it was great. It was like a step back in time for me to go back to what I was doing when I was a teenager. But I'm still here. I'm still here and I'm still doing it. So then to move to Heritage, where you've got more responsibility, I was put on as head breaker. Like I just thrived. I thrived.
End up managing the place.
Ended up managing there.
And I remember you were really soaring. You were soaring.
Yep.
But there's two things that probably you had to overcome. First one was while you're there, you moved out to Heritage. I remember you were on top of the world.
Yeah,
you had
I was.
kids running around the farm.
Yep.
You were making, from where you'd come from, it was just unbelievable. But
Yep.
then there's two things that you had to overcome again before the Darby racing era. One, your good wife Amanda, who'd been with you through all the ups and
Yep.
downs. Amazing woman.
Yep.
She gets diagnosed with cancer.
Oh man, that was a massive kick in the guts.
She had to go through all that with her.
She
and
went
return
through
the favour.
She went through a lot.
Yep.
And thankfully now, praise God, she's healed and she's just finished a 10-year course where they studied her for 10 years and she's cancer free. So that's brilliant. But at that time, I mean, it was trauma again. It was like, man. But also,
then you get hit again,
which is mindful as well for anyone with depression or has a loved one with depression or a friend. Or what happened was when I got to Heritage, I was flying. I was back where I thought I should be. Like I was back. I was good in the mind. I was there. I'm still on medication. At that point, I'd stopped therapy. By the time I got back to Heritage, I'd stopped therapy because the therapist, who was brilliant, he was at Parramatta. I used to have to go over to him. He basically said, "You're good. You're good to go." But I'm still. He said, "But stay on the medication." I said, "Okay." So I remember at the time I resigned. If I've got to take one tablet for the rest of my life, I don't care. But what happened was that because I was flying and I'm the Phoenix resin and everything's great and I'm riding breakers and living the life and living the dream and working with the horse, I stopped taking the medication, didn't I? Because I thought, I don't need this anymore. I don't think I need this anymore. And again, I remember driving out to Heritage and I didn't make it. I pulled over on the side of the road. I had a seizure.
I remember that.
I had a seizure. I used to get seizures as well. I just used to freeze up and go into a seizure. I pulled up and I went into a seizure. And it was just like, oh, shit. Anyway, I laid there for a while until I came out of it in time that I could reach across and ring Sean, who was the manager at the time. I rang him and put him on speaker. I'm going, Sean, come and get me. He's like, Mark, is that you? Come and get me. He's like, where are you? I was on Barker's Lodge Road. He goes, right, mate, I'm coming. So he came, and when he came, I'm still seized up. He's going, oh, mate, you're right. What's wrong? Anyway, I had to explain it to him then, and he's going, oh, mate. And he was oblivious. That's how good I was. Mentally, physically, that's how good I was. He was oblivious that I had any issues. He's like, wow, you should have told me. I said, mate, I'm good. It doesn't mean... I said, but stupidly, I stopped taking the medication. So you can't just stop the medication. You need to see a doctor. If you want to come off, you just got to wean yourself off. So then I went back on. And over the course of the time, I tried a couple of times. And now, thank God again, I'm off medication. I'm off everything.
But you have to overcome another problem, which leads you into Darby racing.
Well, that led me to Darby racing.
You had Amanda battling the cancer. And worked through that.
Yep. And in the
you got through that.
Yep.
And your next big hit, if you hadn't been through enough, you got your dream job. You're on a good wicket.
Loving it.
The kids are loving it.
Loving it.
And the owner of Heritage Park says, I'm selling up.
He says, I'm selling. And I'm just like, it was a knife through my heart. It's like, you're kidding me. You're kidding me. And he's like, no, I'm really sorry. He goes, but don't worry. I've tried to sell the place before. He said, this will be on the market for years. And I'm like...
It happened quick.
Oh, and I think I only managed it for 12 months. And next thing, Tim Martin's bought it. I'm just like, what? And he goes, yeah, Tim Martin. But Tim came in and Tim had a meeting with me and he said, look, not much is going to change. I want to keep Heritage Park. I want to keep all the horses. I want to keep you managing Heritage Park. And you run that side, and I'll have my side, and you're kind of going, okay. So not much is going to change.
Yeah.
Well, it did.
I remember that day.
It all changed, and it was totally. Tim came in, and God bless him. Tim's Tim. He's a great horseman, but they did it totally different than what I was doing it.
And sent you in a coma.
It didn't agree with me the way that it was doing everything. It was just like, oh, I can't do this. I can't do this. And I remember. Tim rented me a house in Oakdale, and it was $440 a week rent. And I'm going, Tim, you can't pay that. He goes, no, I don't care. I want you in a nice house. And it was like, anyway, I moved into there, Willis Street at Oakdale. We moved into there, and I don't know how long I lasted. It was only months. It was a matter of months. And I remember saying, Amanda, I can't do this.
I remember you.
I remember every day I'd wake up. And I'd sit on the edge of the bed and I'd look at the kids and go, I'm doing this for them. I'm doing this for them. But in the meantime, Brooke's born now. Now I've got 2 kids and I'm just sit there and go, I'm doing this for them. I did not want to go. I hated it.
And at that point, Darby racing is in about its third
or fourth year, maybe.
Third or fourth year.
Something like that.
It's myself and my brother, Mark.
In the garage.
We're in the garage.
Goodenia Street.
I'm not doing too much trade.
No.
I'm living from week to week.
Yep.
And you came and saw me about it.
Yep.
Said I'm leaving, and I could see you.
I was dropping again.
And I'm going, not again.
Yep.
And I wasn't sure.
Yep.
He said, I think you might have said, I'm going to go get another job. I'm leaving. I can't do it anymore.
Well, if you remember, you kept saying to me, you can't give up what you do. You're so good at it. Just buy a property and I'll give you all of Darby Racing's horses.
Which wasn't many,
but you were kind of saying, you can do this. And so I did that. I was looking I could not find a property anywhere.
I think also you were starting to look at drivers' jobs and different jobs.
Yeah, I was looking at Sydney Horse.
I don't know whether you actually said, have you got a job?
No, I didn't.
Or whether you just said, I think you came to me one day and you said, you're not going to believe it, I'm going for a job with Triple Crown.
I was too.
With Triple Crown is the Ward brothers, it's the opposition.
Yeah.
And I'd never thought of putting someone on, and I said, no, you're not. You're going to come work for me.
You said, can you come and see us tomorrow morning? I said,
I don't know what that was. I just said, you can't be working for Triple Crown. You can't be working for the opposition.
No. No.
And at that point, I don't think I'd had any idea of putting someone on. We were
No, you
struggling.
hadn't. No.
And I remember talking to my brother, and he said, "How are you going to afford it?" I said, "I don't know, we'll find a way," which has been the motto right through. We'll find a way.
Yeah.
We'll find a way.
Yeah.
And
at that point, if you remember, you had shares in a lot of horses. You had shares in a lot of your horses whether you couldn't sell them or whether you absorbed them if someone wanted to get out. And I remember you sat down and you said, "I've had a look, and if I sell out of all my horses, I can give you a wage. And it won't be much."
Yeah, I used to get stuck with a lot of horses.
You used to get stuck with a lot of horses. It wasn't like you bought in. You would, if people wanted to get out along the way or they were sick of it, or you just absorbed the shares. So you'd be racing 5, 10, 20% of a horse because you're just accumulating them. And you ended up sitting down and going, "Man, I looked and I thought, how much all these horses combined are costing me for a year, if I get rid of them all, I can give you a wage. It won't be a big one, but it'll be..." And I remember at the time I just was desperate it was a good pay cut for me, but I didn't care.
And the weird bit was, like I've done many, many times throughout the Derby racing 17 years, at the time you think, "I don't know how I'm going to do this.
I don't know how I'm going to do this."
But within a month or two, you're going, "It's a piece of cake."
Yeah.
Just work harder, sell more, do whatever.
Yep.
And that's been the motto. But look, it's been a long podcast. I want to tie it all in now. And, you've got some things to say there. And it does remind me, all the stuff you went through and we went through. And just probably what it's saying to me now, we've ended on a more positive note, obviously. And when I think about you then and you now, you must look back in this period, this last 15 years, say, last 10 or 12, 13 years, and think, like, you must appreciate where you've come from.
Yeah, well, it's actually one of my bullet points. I'll read you the bullet points. So the bullet points I've got are for depression, for curing and fixing depression, you cannot just have medication or therapy. You have to have both. You have to have both. They've both got to be combined. It's not something you can simply take a tablet and it fixes it. You've got to have the therapy to recognise why it's come, where it's come from, how to deal with it, and how to pack it up and put it away. So you've got the tools to as it comes every now and then, which is like now I have nothing at all. Back even at Heritage Park and what I would still have little bouts every now and then, but you've got the tools to stop it.
Well, yeah, just a quick on that. You're right, because last year you had some bad medical stuff.
Yep.
Not serious, but it was really playing havoc with it. And when you think about it, that sort of thing could have triggered.
Absolutely.
But you've held firm in any of those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Like, they were pretty bad.
I know.
Like, it was knocking you about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gut issues and different things and heart palpitations.
Yeah.
But now that you say that, that's a good test.
Yeah.
You didn't
plummet.
No.
Because back in the day, that would have triggered me. I would have gone. So that's a key, medication and therapy together. I've spoken to people about that before and they go, "Yeah, I know." It's like you've got to do the pair together. The other thing for the loved ones, you have to be patient with them. You've got to be patient. You can't push them like he did when he'd just come round and sit there with you. There does come a time, it's very much like alcoholics, drug addicts. If they're not ready to stop doing the drugs, doing the alcohol, nothing you can do is going to stop them. The same with the depression. If you're not at a point where you're just ready to do something, all you're going to do as a supporter is push them down further. Basically, you've just got to listen to them and support them. That's all you've got to do. Exactly what you said, which is what I was told. However long it takes you to get into your depression and hit the bottom is how long it's going to take for you to get out of that fight. So I think the key to that is recognising that you've got a problem early. The earlier you realise something isn't right and get it diagnosed and start the therapy and the treatment, the quicker you'll bounce back. If you put it off like us blokes do, put it off, ignore it, don't worry about it, have another beer, It's not going to go away. It won't go away. You have to get it treated and you have to get it sorted, because the quicker you do, the quicker you'll bounce back. For the people that are in it, you've just got to keep looking for the light. I remember it was dark. It was dark and I could not see the light. And when you do start to see that light, when like you say with Mick Sweeney, or little glimpses of light, you've got to go with it. You've got to go with it and get out of that dark, because it's I'll switch these around. Finding something you love to reconnect with. So I'll put horses help me to reconnect. Something that you've had in your past, when it was a kid, whether it's stupid action figures, comics, games, something, music, animals, horses, dogs, cats, whatever. If they're not in your life and they are a thing that will comfort you and reconnect you with life, you have to pursue it. You've got to pursue it and follow it, and because it can help pull you out and get you back on that path. And lastly, which is what you were just talking about, is always, even on the way through, is to take stock of where you've come from and how much better you are, and where you are now compared to where you were. Because when you're coming out of that fight, you can quite quickly go, I'm losing this, I'm not. But it takes someone, a loved one, a friend, to go, man, you have come so far, keep going. And it's actually my brother, because I've sort of moved on and forgotten about it, which is not good, which is probably a reason I was a bit passionate about doing this. When you suggested it, was like, no, I think we should do it, because I've moved on and forgotten about it, and I shouldn't. Because Darren will always say to me, do you think every now and then, man, like, it is a miracle where you come from? And I'm like, no, I actually don't. And he's like, it's a freaking miracle. Where you came from to where you are now, no medication, no therapy. He's like, it's a freaking miracle.
I was just thinking about it just then.
And he said to me, he actually apologised. He said, man, I also want to say sorry for when I used to come around. He said, I had no idea what you're going through, because he'd never had mental illness. Now he has anxiety, and he's on medication for his anxiety, and he realises it's torture. When you're going through it, you don't need someone saying, it's your problem, man. Come on, get up and get out of bed.
Well, it's nature that if someone's
Absolutely.
down, get
you want to lift them and help them up.
take them out for a beer.
Come on, man.
Let's go.
Come on, man.
Let's go to the footy.
Yep.
And it's not about just feeling sad.
No.
It's a proper...
So he actually apologised and said, man, I had no idea. But you need to be thankful of where you've come from and where you are now. And that's exactly what you just said. You think about it. And I don't enough.
We all need to appreciate life and where we've come from and the good things in our life. And I know it's been a very heavy podcast. Thanks, Mark, for sharing that.
Well, I think it's important because it is a big topic and a big issue.
Yeah.
And the last thing you want is...
Particularly in the racing industry, there's a lot of people suffering in silence.
Yep.
And feel free to speak to Mark.
Yep.
You speak to myself. I've had to deal with family's anxiety. I touch wood, and thank God I haven't had him really myself, but been around me a lot. Feel free to contact us. But as I said, Dave Rorison, who puts all this together from Stridle, he'll put up some phone numbers if you are suffering to get in contact with places like Lifeline and different places. Mark will speak with Dave. But feel free to give us a call if you just want to chat. Maybe you're not in the pits of hell, but maybe you feel you're heading that way and you just want someone to talk to.
But look at me. Look where I've come from. I'm the example that you too can be like this. So it doesn't have to. Why I wanted to do this was to recollect on what happened and where you can get to, and people can look at you and say, "Really?" They're oblivious. But when you can do it, you can do it. You can get out of it, and you can get back on top. Absolutely.
Thanks, Mark.